Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back. Brandon again. Today I want to talk about the Rogue parallel grip landmine handles. You can see them right here. They're big, they're beefy, they take up the whole frame and are bigger than my head. And at $62.50, I think they're a great deal considering what you get for them. And I'll kind of break it down in this particular video. That being said, you don't need these by any means. If you have a barbell, a pull-up bar, you can do bent over rows, pendlay rows, pull-ups, chin-ups. You can do meadows rows. You don't even have to have a landmine attachment. Even though these are the landmine handles, you could stick your barbell in the corner of your gym and have someone stand on it or weigh it down in some other fashion and still do a lot of back work that way. So take it for what it's worth. But personally speaking, I find like close grip work for me hits my back really well. It's one of the things I've really missed since transitioning to a home gym because I don't have a lat pull down because number one, they're very expensive. And number two, they take up a lot of floor space, which are two of the probably biggest concerns when buying anything for a home gym. So I don't have access to a lat pull down or a low pulley. So this is the next best option and it's cheap and affordable at, again, $62.50 and takes up little to no floor space, which is again, a huge win in my opinion. Now this isn't my first foray into the world of handles from Rogue. In fact, I had the straight bar handles previously, which were nice, but not as nice as this. And it's interesting because how can a handle be nice and have extra features? This one does, my friends, and I'll tell you about those in just a second. They also have angled versions as well, which again, aren't as nice and don't have as nice as features. And for some reason, both of those other legacy versions are more expensive. So again, where this is $62.50, the other versions are $65 or $70. So I don't really get it. So you might be asking, Brandon, what features are you talking about? It's a handle. What can it do? Well, first of all, number one, I can easily rest it on my shoulder like this, which doesn't seem like a very valuable feature for anyone training, which I would agree with, but this is kind of an offset of that because if you take a look at this from the side, the construction of it, it is angled from where it inserts into the bar to where the handles go down to, which means that when you put this on your barbell or your landmine in order to do work, the handles are offset enough where you're not really running into the issue of hitting the plates. And that's one of the issues I had with my other straight bar handle. The handle was right there and the weights were pretty much right on top of you. And what ended up happening was it was limiting the range of motion. Not the case with this because it's offset. And for the sake of this video, it also makes for a nice shoulder rig, which is pretty cool, but not very beneficial to you. Now coming to the front, some other things that are pretty cool, but not necessarily beneficial. On the actual handles itself, has these rubber end caps. Again, they're more just aesthetic. You could just have open tubing here, but I think the end caps make it look nicer, feel more premium. Truth be told, most cases that I've had with these rubber end caps on other applications, they end up popping off over time, especially on like weight trees where the weights are sliding on and off and potentially catch these and pull them off. I don't imagine it'll be a problem on these handles because there's nothing coming on and off them. And if you are going to touch them, it's probably going to be because you're taking a higher grip and you might rest your thumbs there, which if for anything would probably actually keep them on there a little bit better. So again, nice feature, not necessary. Speaking of nice feature, not necessary, the Rogue logo is laser cut into this. As is most things Rogue, they like to put their stamp on it. I think this makes it look more premium, but again, doesn't add any functionality to it. Now, the interesting thing is this plate that logo is kind of cut into, you'll see that it's cut out a little bit. So there is a little bit of a dip here, same thing on the rear. And at first thought, this doesn't really mean much, but as you start doing rows with this and pulling it in, what I found is that's a perfect cutout for my gut. So depending on how deep of a bulk you're into at any given time, this thing is going to conform to your body very nicely and allow for slightly more range of motion without potentially also cutting up your gut a little bit or wherever you're choosing to row into. So nice feature, which I actually didn't know was necessary until I started using this. Now turning this to the side, just to show you the handles. We talked about the end caps, but the handles themselves on this are considered the fat grip. So there's two variants of this. Fat grip and standard grip, both are the same price. Fat grip, 1.9 inches in diameter. Standard grip, 1.3 inches. It's really personal preference. Me personally, I like the fatter grip. I feel like I get a better feel of the actual handle itself, and I just get a better feel in my back when using the fat grips. That being said, speaking of grip, this thing is not knurled, which some might see as a negative. I don't really see it as a necessity on something like this because it has this black powder coat, which is slightly textured. If you have a pull-up bar from Rogue, it's the same kind of finish. So there is some texture to it, which does add to your grip. But if you need to add chalk or something like that, I'm sure you could do that down the road. So fat grips for me on here. If you like the standard version, you can do that. Again, same price difference, no biggie. Now coming down to kind of the last thing I want to talk about is where you actually put the bar in. So your sleeve would go in here. Nice thing about this is the edges here are all beveled, so there's no hard edges. Again, one of the things that I see when I talk to people about landmines or landmine attachments is they're worried that it's going to beat up their bar. That's why oftentimes people will use a beater bar for landmine work. I've had no problems using my expensive Kabuki bar, which retails for over $700 on this, just because I'm not an asshole when it comes to it. And the way that this is designed, and the Rogue Monster Landmine, which I've done a video review on and will link in the description box below, kind of has some finishes that, again, aren't your standard ones that are going to eat up your bar. So number one, this is beveled, which is nice. Number two, it's seamless on the inside, so there's no welds inside that could potentially be scratching up your bar, which isn't always the case for other handles and designs that are out there on the market. The only downside with this that I can really tell up to this point is the fact that, again, it uses a powder coat, which anytime that you have metal on metal or friction, you're opting to get some stuff chipping. And unfortunately, this thing is not immune to that. I had some slight chipping on the back where the bar comes on. But again, I think that's kind of to be expected. I've experienced this with anything powder coated that I own that kind of, again, has that friction there. The good news is it's only aesthetic and doesn't really cause any issues in terms of usability on it. Speaking of usability, the last thing I want to highlight on this before we wrap up this video is the fact that yes, this thing is massive. Yes, this thing is heavy, but that actually works to its benefit here in the aspect where you can flip this thing upside down and it's big enough to when it's on the bar, it acts as like a deadlift jack. So it actually raises the bar up enough where you can actually fit on 45-pound plates, which is really good because it makes this really easy to load, which could potentially be an issue if you're going heavy on your rowing movements and don't have like a dedicated barbell jack or something like that, or don't want to use a 2.5 or 5 pound plate. This is actually a built-in jack, if you will, which is also very nice. It's very sturdy. Things won't roll, which is one of the issues I have with using the 2.5 or 5 pound plates. Not to mention you risk damaging those pieces of equipment. This thing has it kind of built in as what I would consider a nice little add-on feature. So at the end of the day, if you're looking to kind of enhance your back work, or you're missing that close grip work and want something that's not going to break the bank and take up little floor space, I think for $62.50, which translates to me to $80 when I talk about shipping and tax to the East Coast, I think it's a very cheap, easy to add-on, and it's very effective, and it's probably one of my favorite back movements to do in terms of building volume and assistance work and some size to my back, which, let's be honest, probably use it in this case. So hopefully that answers some questions if you were looking at this. If I didn't answer it, leave it in the comment section below. I'll be sure to get to it. But in the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.